welcome to Storytime for Home Time with me, James Mayhew. Today I'm going to tell you a story all about a magical god called Cupid. And it's a story from ancient Greece. It's not a story that's ever been in one of my books, but I love it very much, and it's a story that inspired a famous fairy tale. I wonder if you can guess which fairy tale was based on this story. The story is called Cupid and Psyche. Now, up in the sky where the Greek gods lived, there was the goddess of love. Her name was Venus, or Aphrodite in Greek. And Aphrodite, she had a son called Eros, or sometimes called Cupid, and he was the god of love. Now, down on earth, where the ordinary people lived, there was a beautiful young girl, the youngest of three sisters, and her name was Psyche. Everybody said she was the most beautiful mortal in all the world. And Aphrodite was jealous. How dare an ordinary mortal girl be more beautiful than me, she said. Only gods should be that beautiful. It's not right for her to be beautiful at all. So she gave Cupid, her son, a magic bow and arrow. She said to him, if you fire an arrow and it hits somebody, they will fall in love with the next person they see. How wonderful! I like the idea of that. But I want you to use it very carefully, said Aphrodite. I want you to shoot an arrow at this girl who lives on earth. Her name is Psyche, and people say she's the most beautiful person in the whole world. I want you to shoot the arrow at her when she's near a monster. I want her to fall in love with a monster. Well, Cupid didn't like to argue with his own mother, and so off he went down to earth to look for this girl who everybody said was so very beautiful. When he arrived near the house where he was told she lived, he waited outside. And sure enough, soon the door opened and out came this beautiful girl, flowers in her hair. And Cupid gasped. He couldn't believe his eyes. She really was the most beautiful girl in the world. And he didn't look what he was doing, and he dropped his bow and arrow. And the arrow fell into his own foot, and all the magic in the arrow went into his veins, and Cupid fell in love with Psyche. And then he thought, oh no, now what am I going to do? I can't go back and tell my mother that I've fallen in love with the girl that she hates. Oh, this is a terrible mess. He decided he would have to hide Psyche and pretend that she was dead, or that she'd fallen in love with a monster, or something. He couldn't tell his mother that he was in love with her. Now there's a magical god of wind called the Zephyr, and the Zephyr appeared and carried Psyche off her feet up into the sky. Help, she cried, where am I going? She was being carried up into a castle in the clouds, a castle in the clouds where Cupid lived, a secret castle that his mother didn't know about. And there he hid Psyche away. He never showed himself to Psyche. He always made sure that she didn't see him, because he didn't want her to know who he was. He would appear in the middle of the night when Psyche couldn't see him, and he would say to her, "Don't worry, my love. I will look after you. You will have everything you want here. All the food, all the beautiful clothes, gold and treasure, everything you could possibly dream of will be yours in my castle in the clouds. You will want for nothing. But you must never, ever find out who I am." It was a very strange mystery for poor Psyche, and she missed her father and her mother and her sisters very, very much. Every day, invisibly, Cupid would appear. Sometimes he would give her gifts, gold and treasure. But Psyche wasn't really happy, and he knew it. And he said to her one day, "Why are you so sad? I give you everything you could possibly want." "Except my freedom," said Psyche. "Can I not go back and see my father just one more time? I miss him so much." Cupid said, "All right, I will let you go." And so down to earth she went, on the magical wind, the zephyr. Cupid said to her, "You can only stay for 1 week, and then you must come back to me. If you don't, I think I would die of a broken heart." "I promise I will come back," she said. And when she arrived back on earth, she went straight to see her mother and father and her sisters. Her father particularly had missed her terribly and was so overjoyed to see her. Her mother too, of course, but not so much her sisters, and they were a bit jealous to see Psyche dressed in a beautiful dress and wearing lots and lots of jewellery. Let's give her a little necklace. Psyche told them all about the strange castle in the clouds where she lived, and how she never saw the person who ruled in the castle, but he was very kind and gave her lots and lots of gifts. The sisters sniffed. They said, "I bet he doesn't show himself. Of course he doesn't show himself, because he's so ugly. He must be a monster. Maybe he's a minotaur or a kraken or something hideous like that." "Oh, no," said Psyche. "He treats me very kindly. He's not a monster. I'm sure he's not a monster." "How do you know?" said the sisters. "Well, he's very kind to me, and—" "I think he's a monster," said the sisters. "He's going to eat you one of these days. You wait and see. He's looking after you to make you nice and fat, and then when you're fat enough, he's going to gobble you right up. If I was you, I wouldn't go back." They only said it to be nasty because they were jealous. But it got Psyche thinking, "Oh dear, what if they're right? What if, perhaps, he really is a monster who wants to eat me?" Well, soon the time came for her to return. She had made up her mind. She was going to go back, but she was going to find out who he was, despite the promise to never know. That night, when she got back to the castle in the clouds, having been carried up by the magic wind zephyr, that night she waited until she knew Cupid was sleeping, and then she lit a candle, and she held the candle over Cupid to see who he was in the dark. And oh, she was so surprised, because there he was, the most handsome man she'd ever seen. He had wings growing out of his back, and she knew that he must be a god. And he was, oh, so handsome. Not a monster at all. And she was so dreamily looking at him, she didn't notice that the wax from the candle was dripping, and it dripped down onto Cupid as he slept, and it burned his shoulder, and he jumped awake. He said, "Oh, you've broken the promise. You said you would never look at me, but now you have, and now, how can I love you?" And he threw her from the palace. He cast her out, and she tumbled back down to earth, and she lay in the grass on earth, sobbing and sobbing, "Oh, how stupid I've been," she said. "Oh, because now I realise I really, really do love him. Whether he's a man or a monster or a god, it doesn't matter. But it's too late. Now he no longer loves me." Well, she realised from his wings that he must be a god, and she guessed that he was the god of love, and knew then that he was the son of Aphrodite. And so Psyche went into a temple, the temple of Aphrodite, and prayed to Aphrodite, the goddess of love. "Please help me," she said. Well, Aphrodite heard this, but thought, "Why on earth should I help her? She's the girl I wanted to get rid of. She's the girl I was jealous of." Psyche didn't know any of this. But she decided, Aphrodite, to set 3 tasks. "Very well, I will help you. But first, you must fetch me water from the mouth of the river Styx." The river Styx is a famous river in Greek stories that flows to the land of the dead. Psyche thought, "I can't get that water. It's too far away. It's coming out of a terrible waterfall." But suddenly an eagle flew down and carried her up into the sky to the top of the waterfall, and she was able to get the magic water, which she gave to Aphrodite. Aphrodite was very surprised that the eagle had helped her. "Now," she said, "I want you to find all the different grains in this mountain of grains." She showed Psyche a mountain of different grains, wheat and barley, and they were all tumbled up, thousands and thousands of grains. "By sunset you must separate them all," said Aphrodite. "It's not possible," thought poor Psyche. But then hundreds and hundreds of mice appeared, and they went through the mountain of grain, and they separated them all for her. Well, Aphrodite couldn't believe her eyes. "The whole of nature wants to help her," she said. "Extraordinary. I will set her one more task, though, and this will be the hardest of all. You must go into the land of the dead. You must go into Hades, and there you must fetch me a box of beauty from the queen of the land of the dead, whose name is Persephone." Now, Psyche was scared of this, because usually if you went to the land of the dead, you didn't come back. But in she went. And by the entrance to the land of the dead, there was a cave where there was an old woman called the Sibyl, and she kindly gave Psyche some magic herbs and a coin to help her cross the river, because to cross the river you have to pay a man on a boat called the ferryman. So after she paid the ferryman and she crossed the magic river Styx to the land of the dead, suddenly she saw a dog, the one I've drawn in the picture. Can you see him? Got 3 heads. His name is Cerberus, which, of course, Psyche had the magic herbs, and she threw them down on the ground, and the dog, being greedy, gobbled up the herbs and fell asleep. And so Psyche went down to the underworld, and she met Persephone, the queen of the underworld, and she got a box of beauty to give to Aphrodite. And then she came back to earth. When she came back to earth, she was very tired, and she lay down by a pond and looked into the water at her reflection, and she saw that after all her adventures, time had passed, and she wasn't very beautiful anymore. She looked very tired, and she thought, "Oh no, I'm not beautiful today. What if Cupid no longer loves me?" Then she realised she had a box of beauty. She opened it up and she took some beauty out, and the beauty was very powerful. It was magic only for gods, and it put Psyche into a deep sleep. Cupid was watching all this from up in the heavens, and suddenly he felt sorry for her, and he said to Aphrodite, "You've got to help her, please. You've been horrible and cruel to her, but now you must help her." So Aphrodite spoke to all the gods in the sky, and they agreed that Psyche had been very, very kind and very, very generous and didn't deserve this, and so they would turn her into a god or goddess. And so they did. Psyche became a goddess. And now that she was a goddess, Aphrodite couldn't really complain about her being very, very beautiful. And they shared the box of beauty, and Psyche went to live with the gods. She married Cupid and they lived together happily ever after. Now in the picture you can see I've drawn Psyche going into the underworld where there's lots of fire and a terrible three-headed dog. Rawr! If you'd like to win the picture, why don't you have a go doing a drawing to go with that strange Greek story of Cupid and Psyche? And I'll pick my favourite from social media. You can post your pictures on Twitter or on Facebook, and I'll pop this in the post to say well done. Which story did it remind you of? Which story do you think was inspired by this story of Cupid and Psyche? Shall I tell you? It was Beauty and the Beast. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time on Storytime for Home Time.